your school logo, which I took off the Facebook page where you uploaded it, I then put it into Paintbrush and just tidied it up very slightly. Now, your original image was not great, to be honest. If you've got a black and white image, you get much better results when you're doing this. But anyway, I tidied it up a little bit in Paintbrush, and then I opened it up in this program called Inkscape. And in Inkscape, I've been able to change it from a bitmap image into a vector, and I then save that to my desktop with the name drawing. I'm not going to save it again. So it's now as a vector image, as an SVG file, which you say you already have. What I can do then is to import it into this application that I've created called Fluid Designer for 3D Printing, which is based on Blender. And if you want to go to my website at fluiddesigner.co.uk, you can download it completely for free. It is based on Blender. You could try using Blender, but I think Fluid Designer works much better with curve objects. So in Fluid Designer, all you have to do is to go to File and Import, and you import a scalable vector graphic, which is what you say you've already got. And I put it on the desktop and I called it drawing, so I import that SVG file. Now when you import it, in the outliner panel over here there should be an object called curve, and if I just scroll the center mouse button, you can see there it is, and this is what happens in Inkscape. Now yours might not be that small, but as you can see it clearly is very tiny on mine, and if I open up the properties panel, it's less than a millimeter in size, this object. In fact, 0.1 millimeters. So I need to resize this, but first of all I'll put it directly in the center. It's the best place to work in Fluid Designer. So first of all, if I go to Tools, Object Tools, and set the origin to the geometry of the shape, and then if I go to Cursor and snap the selection to the cursor, that just puts it in the center of my screen there. Now what I want to do is to scale this object up. And we can do that by pressing S on the keyboard, so S on the keyboard for scale, and I'm going to type in 100, and you can see it's getting bigger, and 100, so in my case I'm going to type it into 1,000, and that gives me, if you look at the dimensions on the right of the screen there, over here, 110 millimeters, which is kind of the size of your bed, but you can always scale it down to different dimensions. So I'm going to press the Enter key there. And I'm just going to press the home key on my keyboard just to get the whole thing on the screen. So I've rescaled it to 110 millimeters by 110 millimeters. Now whenever you scale like that, because this is a Bezier curve, you must always hold down the Control key and press A and apply the scale. If you don't do that, weird things are going to happen later. Now what I now need to do is to press the Tab key on the keyboard and press the A key to select all the control points. And over here I've got a mean weight and a mean radius. Now when I import it from Inkscape, these values are always a bit weird. I've scaled it to 100. These values should both be 1. Now if yours has not been created in Inkscape, you might not have this problem of setting these back to 1, but you really, from my point of view, I always need to do that. Alright, so I'll press A on the keyboard to deselect all of those control points, and Tab on the keyboard to come out of edit mode. Now there's a material slot here, which I'm just going to delete. That just takes that colour off it. It's not important from the point of view of 3D printing, but I'm used to working with the objects in grey. So this is now a Bezier curve, and all we need to do is extrude it. So if we go to the curve icon here in properties, and if I select extrude 1 millimeter, it actually creates a depth of 2 millimeters. It puts 1 millimeter above the grid and 1 millimeter below, and extrude and extrude. Now that's not all you're going to actually have to do to sort this out to get it to 3D print. Because if you actually go to, if I just go to view and top view, some of these places here, these are really thin. They're not going to 3D print. But if you press the Tab key on the keyboard and you click on a control point there, and if I just press G, I'll just switch off the snap. If I just press G on the keyboard, you can see I can thicken up that area there. So that was originally very, very thin. I need it to be about more than 1 millimetre really. So if I use the ruler, you see that's about 1.6 millimetres. So I could make it a little bit thinner. So I'm just using the ruler here to measure the thickness. But I'm afraid you're going to have to do that all the way around the object here. And in some cases like this one here, you're going to have to sort of highlight those, and X on the keyboard will delete those unnecessary control points there. So this is actually a Bezier curve, X, and that will delete. Alright, so that's a Bezier curve which will 3D print. But then again, you do have to take into account that these objects are kind of sat on their own in the middle there. So you might want to put an object underneath it and put it on top to actually really make it 3D printable. Alright, so that's how I did it anyway. Good luck.